Hi, hello! Today I'm revisiting the Natasha Denona Glam Face and Eye palette in my little countdown towards ranking all the palettes I bought in 2022. I'm actually revisiting them so that I'm reminded a little bit of the formulas, the textures, how I felt about them. For some of them I have a pretty good idea how I felt about them. For others I was quite happy to do this revisiting sort of thing. I like doing those chatty get ready with me style, so I'm actually going to just start applying my makeup, starting off with my eyeshadow base. So besides the light version of this palette, I'm actually going to feature the dark version as well, because it's been a while since I've used the dark version of this palette too, and I figured it might be, you know, a nice opportunity to do a little mashup of the two and just be reminded of how much I love both the dark and the light version. I originally purchased the dark version last year when it was released, and I quite enjoyed the preschoolers here to inform me of his woos. Anyway, so what was I saying? Oh yeah, that I purchased the dark version. I really liked it, and after that I was really tempted to buy the light version of this palette because I saw Charlotte Holdcroft wearing it and I was already familiar with the formula, specifically of the metallic shades. I agonized for quite a while before buying the light version of this palette. I did not buy it new, so I didn't pay a full price for it. I actually paid a really good price for it. I bought it secondhand, but honestly it looked almost untouched, so I'm pretty happy with the way this went. Now today is Tuesday and I don't have that much time left anymore to do the ranking because I would like to upload the ranking before New Year's Day. My best friend growing up in Bulgaria contacted me, and we just made this very spontaneous plan for her to come together with her partner to celebrate New Year's with us. So between New Year's and the first few days of January I'm actually going to be busy with them, and I want to upload the ranking video before that. So I think what I'm going to do is, there is one palette that I absolutely would like to revisit on camera because I actually haven't used it in a while, but then I am going to skip revisiting the Lisa Eldridge palettes because frankly I did a whole series featuring these palettes, so I have a pretty good idea how I feel about them and what I want to say. I'm sorry, Nicola just keeps coming in and interrupting me.
Mama!
Ja, lieverd. Doei! As I was saying, he just keeps coming and interrupting me and I keep forgetting my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh yes, that I'm not going to be revisiting my Lisa Eldridge palettes because whole series very recently, you know it. And I don't think I'm going to be revisiting my Soft Cashmere Quint from Dior, because I'm pretty sure I did a video with that one relatively, in the relatively recent history. So I'm not going to include that one either. I'm probably just going to include that video, which I'm referring to in the playlist so that you can see it in action, but I'm not actually going to, you know, revisit it one more time. So there's only one more true revisiting in this series, and then I'm just going to do the ranking. And I haven't actually thought much about how I'm going to rank these. And with some of them it will be really hard to rank. All of these brown quads, I have no idea how I'm going to put one up against the other, because they're, well, there are ways to distinguish between them. So I'm sure we can make something fun out of it. You're also not going to really see a declutter video from me this year. Not because I haven't decluttered, but mostly because of the style in which I declutter. I don't do declutters once a year. I basically declutter spontaneously. Every now and then I'll be like, okay, this now needs to go out of my collection, or I will think of someone associated with a specific product that I don't use anymore and I will just bring it to them and give it away, and I don't always remember exactly which products I gave away throughout the year. I do have a little box of stuff here that I am decluttering. I don't know whether you will be interested to see the contents of that box. And something else that I decluttered quite brutally very recently after, you know, agonizing again over it for far too long. I should have done this a year ago or something. But I decluttered all of my loose indie eyeshadows, everything. The stuff that I had pressed myself, everything that had still remained in a loose form because I was afraid to ruin the formula. I decluttered everything and I sent it out to one of you guys, one of my oldest subscribers, someone who's been here with me since my very early indie eyeshadow days, and I know that she still super much enjoys loose indie eyeshadows. I think she will get a lot of use out of whatever in, you know, that package is still in good shape. Like everything that's still in a loose form is in a good shape. And I think a bunch of the things that I pressed are still pretty, you know, okay to use. It's just that you will have to make decisions about what kind of colors suit her, what she wants to keep, what she wants to give away, test out whether the stuff that I pressed really performs well on the eye, because a bunch of them I pressed and I never actually applied on my eyes. And there were also a crap ton of notoriously morbid matte eyeshadows, which of course I never even attempted to press, because pressing matte eyeshadows is not as simple as pressing metallic eyeshadows. So yeah, I basically freed like 2 drawers by decluttering my Lucy in the eyeshadow collection. I think the reason I didn't want to do it for the longest time is because of the sentimental attachment I had to the items, to what they meant for me, to a specific, you know, time in my life, and also in my history of discovering, you know, different types of makeup, I guess. But I try my absolute best not to hold on to things for sentimental reasons and out of nostalgia. I do have a nostalgia drawer, and there are a couple of items in there that I would have a really hard time getting rid of because they just mean so much to me. Once again, a specific, you know, item in the history of makeup, like the Subculture palette or the Urban Decay Electric palette, or something that I got from my parents, you know, stuff like that. So I'm silly and sentimental, but I try not to have that kind of sentimentality take up like half of my Alexa drawers. Because if I were to take you now through my Alexa drawer where I keep my makeup, you will see that it's actually quite empty, because a bunch of my favorite makeup is on display, and by a bunch of my favorite makeup I'm basically referring to my Pat McGrath palettes, and the few other things that I have kept in terms of eyeshadows or highlighters, my blush collection, my lipsticks, everything fits quite nicely, and it's not even snug in my Alexa drawers anymore. And I'm sure there are a number of other items in those drawers waiting to be, you know, passed along, but I don't like throwing away things. I will only throw away things if they're like super old, like and probably not performing anymore. I'm going to take this Charlotte Tilbury Sunkissed bronzer in the shade medium, and it's not that all of a sudden I'm going to be Marie Kondoing my makeup collection. I just want to have like a really good overview of what I have in my collection and rotate through the things that I love the most a lot. Like I rotate a lot, obviously, through my Pat McGrath collection. I rotate fairly well through my Natasha Denona collection, although not as well as my Pat McGrath stuff. I do feel like I could do a lot better in that aspect. Speaking of rotating through my Natasha Denona makeup, I'm actually going to take the dark version of that Face and Eye Glam palette, and I am going to take the blush from here because I really love the tone of this blush. It is more like a terracotta color. The one in the light version is also very pretty and would definitely fit the look that I'm going for today. It's more of this like rosy clay kind of color, also really pretty, but I haven't worn the one in the dark palette in a really long time, so I would like to put it on my cheeks today. It's not the most super long-lasting formula, but I never really expect cream products to be as long-lasting as powder products unless you set them with a little bit of powder over top. But look what a lovely color. It just blended out so effortlessly. It looks so beautiful and like luminous on the skin. You see, I need to do better using my Natasha Denona items, and I think I will do a lot of a better job if I edit down my collection to really focus on the things that I truly love. Okay, for the highlighter, I'm actually going to dip back into the lighter palette because I think this shade fits me a little bit better now in the winter. It is a little bit lighter in tone. And the formula on these highlighters is very similar to the formula that Pat released with Golden Nectar together with the Divine blushes. To me, these two formulas are almost identical. They feel, they perform, and they, for all intents and purposes, are dupes of each other. And I don't use the term dupe lightly. Okay, I have zoomed you in and we're going to start off on the eye look. Like I said, I'm going to mainly focus on the light palette, but I am going to incorporate the dark palette for just a teensy bit as well, because as you can see, this palette is an excellent curation of fairly like lighter tones of like brown and champagne. So it won't really work if you want to add a lot of depth. If you want to use something as an eyeliner or really add a lot of depth in your lashes or in your outer corner, this is not the palette that's going to give you that. But if you want a very light, effortless but effective glam look, like daytime glam look, at least daytime glam look for my standards, then this palette is going to deliver. So what I'm going to do, and what I will usually do when I use this palette, is use one of these shades through my crease. And then I'm going to quickly jump into the darker version of this palette because I do actually want to add just a little bit more definition here in my lower lashes today. And I think I'm going to go for this like smoky dark brown shade to apply here just in my lashes as a little bit of like a smudged liner, a technique you've seen me use a lot in the past year or so because I really like the definition that it adds, and it really adds something to the look. Then jumping back into the light palette, I'm going to do the exact same thing that I always do, which is I dip my brush back and forth between these two to make sort of like a mashup between the two. Individually, they're very beautiful, but I really like what they do when you like mix them together. And I will tell you what we will do for the inner corner when we get to that. So starting off with a light dusting of those lighter like transition brown mattes from the light version of the palette. The mattes in here are typical Natasha Denona quality. I've never really had complaints with Natasha Denona's mattes. For me, they've always like been very easy to work with, really easy to blend out. You can see this was completely like effortless. I really enjoy both of these palettes for what they are. I don't want them to be complicated. I don't want them to be colorful. I want them to be something that doesn't require a lot of thinking in the morning, and I know that it's a formula that I can fully rely on. When I do my usual looks, just relying on the light version of this palette, the next step would be throwing on the metallic shades, a little bit of those crease shades on my lower lash line, something in the inner corner, and poof, done. But like I said, today I want to actually add a little bit more definition here in my lash line, just to see how that looks like paired with the light palette, and you know, do something a little bit different, because I've done a look that is very similar to what we're going to do today in the summer when I was demoing one of the Lisa Eldridge lipsticks. I think I did like a get ready with me where I used the light version of this palette together with Strawberry Shock. I don't necessarily think you need to have glitter glue on your light eyelids, but I am going to apply just the tiniest bit of my NYX glitter glue before I apply the metallic shades. Inner corner and then lid. And then I like to take a flat shader brush and go into the real treat in this palette, which are these metallic shades. So like I said, I like to dip back and forth between the two and then just smudge them all over my lids. Gosh darn, these are so beautiful, so shiny, such an incredibly like wet looking formula on the lids. And I've said it before, but I will reiterate it. In my opinion, this is the type of formula that works better with a brush because it really benefits from being like swiped a few times, because then that like shiny effect really gets intensified. I feel like I'm lacking just a little bit more definition here in the outer corner, so I'm going to take my fluffy brush and stick it here into the darkest shade in the light palette and just like lightly tap it right here into the outer portion of the eye, and it will give just the slightest bit of definition, but it will really add something to the look. Now, the thing I love actually doing the most with these like neutral types of palettes is to add an inner corner pop of highlight. And I love, love, love using the mint shade from the Bridgerton 2 palette from Pat McGrath Labs. But my other absolute favorite, and one that I think is going to fit with my clothing today much better, is the lavender shade from the Fleur Fantasia Quad. This is not the kind of eyeshadow that I love using all over my lids because it lacks, you know, there's something lacking if I put it all over my lid. I'm always a little bit underwhelmed if I use it as a lid shade, and the same counts for that mint shade from the Bridgerton 2 palette. But as soon as I put them into my inner corners, they really come to life. So I'm going to shove this right here into the inner corner so that you can also appreciate what a beautiful look these two make. Look at that. And what a perfect shade this lavender is to put in your inner corners. Okay, so this is the final look and I decided to go for a little bit of a contrast on the lips. So I chose for a Cinnabar from Lisa Eldridge because I think the orangey tones in Cinnabar play so well with the purple elements that I have in my clothing and in my makeup. Because, you know, opposing colors on the color wheel create a beautiful contrast, and I think orange and purple are one of my favorite contrasting colors to wear together. Face and Eye Glam palette remains a favorite. I've enjoyed every single look that I have done with it. Every time that I put these metallic eyeshadows on my lids, I'm always so impressed by how incredibly beautiful and shiny and like wet looking they are on the lids. Now I will say this. This is like neutral glam, my style. I like my neutral eyeshadows to have oomph to them, but they are not subtle. This formula is not subtle, it is sparkly, it is going to attract attention to your lids. So if you want to have a neutral eyeshadow palette but you don't want it to be too glam, then I don't think this is going to be for you. I did lend this to a friend of mine at work who really liked some of the looks that I was creating with this palette, and she borrowed it and she said that the metallic shades in this palette were just too much for her on the daily. So to each their own. To me, this was the perfect neutral palette, still is one of the most beautiful neutral palettes that I own in my collection. I'm really curious where this palette is going to end up in my final ranking, and I wouldn't be surprised if it ranks relatively high despite being such a simple, like monochromatic color story. Let me know what you thought about this look. Do you have any of these face and eye glam palettes from Natasha Denona? What do you think about them? As usual, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!